because people are famous, we then grant them a certain level of credibility on other issues. So the latest example of this is Kanye West. So believe it or not, the right is now resonating to Kanye West. Can we remember back to 2005 when after Hurricane Katrina, Kanye West went out there and said that George W. Bush had purposely targeted black people with a hurricane? That guy? Like the guy who jumped on stage with Taylor Swift and said, "I'm gonna let you finish"? That one? So now he's tweeting out deep thoughts, and the right is so excited. They're so excited because Kanye West is tweeting out things that sound kind of right-wing. Like he tweeted out that he supports Candace Owens. Candace Owens, nice gal. I'm friendly with Candace. Candace is, she works with Charlie Kirk over at Turning Point USA. She's a black conservative. And Kanye West tweeted out that he likes how she thinks. And now he tweets out, "We have freedom of speech, but not freedom of thought." And then he also tweeted this one out. Okay, that's true, I think. And then he tweeted out, "The thought police want to suppress freedom of thought." Okay, also true. And then he also tweeted out at one point that self-victimization is a disease. Agree with all of these things. And I'm looking forward to Kanye West tweeting out, "Facts don't care about your feelings." Like, I think it'll be great. But the right responded to Kanye West as though it was an earth-shattering thing that a big celebrity like Kanye West was saying things that were remotely conservative. It just demonstrates the right's desperation to be taken seriously in the sphere of pop culture. I think that the Roseanne ratings are another evidence of this. I think that the right wants to be taken seriously. They don't want to be seen as bad, evil people. And the pop culture decides who's seen as bad and evil. Pop culture tells you stories. And the folks in pop culture decide who gets to be portrayed as the villain and who gets to be portrayed as the hero. So every time somebody on the right is portrayed as not the villain, the right is willing to take it. So if Roseanne voted for Trump, even if she is pro-cross-dressing and pro-gay marriage and pro-promiscuity and pro-abortion, we'll go, well, you know what? At least she's treating us well, so we like Roseanne now. We're doing the same thing with Kanye West. But I would just warn folks on the right. You know, you can be happy that Kanye West said something that seems to be conservative, but let's not pretend that Kanye West is some sort of genius, okay?
We're going to play you a soundbite from Candace Owens, who is the communications director for Turning Point USA. She was at UCLA in the last couple of days, and she was confronting some Black Lives Matter protesters, and she had a point for them. Listen to this, and then we want to get your point of view.
Sure.
Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did, and it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans.
You're overly privileged Americans, she said that. And then a few hours or a day or two later, Kanye West, the singer, the artist, tweeted this out. "I love the way Candace Owens thinks." And then now he's taking a lot of heat because he's supporting somebody who's from the political right. What did you make of what she had to say?
Well, I think that Candace is commenting about the danger of adopting a victimization oppressor narrative, and it's a narrative that the hard left has really been pushing, and ever since Marx, of course, that the world is composed of those who are victimized and those who are the oppressors, and everyone successful is an oppressor, and everyone else is a moral victim, like a morally acting victim. And it's a very, very dangerous narrative, and it's certainly one that's unbelievably widespread on university campuses. To look at the world that way, to look at the world through a group identity lens is puts us back in a tribal situation and will produce conflict. It has throughout the 20th century. And so Candace is objecting to that, and rightly so. It's an unbelievably pernicious ideology, and the universities are to blame for distributing it in large part. It's really appalling and dangerous.
Well, when you look at just politics in general, during the last election cycle back in 2016, the Democrats did adopt a very strong identity politics program. And, you know, all the postmortems had said that really didn't work. So it will be interesting to see what the Democrats do going forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, the right-wingers, the conservative types like Candace have to tell a better story than the Democrats, and the story's got to be, and this goes for centrist liberals too, the story has to be that, you know, there's obviously racial differences and ethnic differences and gender differences and all of that, and some of that manifests itself in terms of prejudice, but the fundamental issue is that we've always regarded the individual as the measure in the West, and that's the best idea the world's ever had. And if we lose that, then it's going to be catastrophic. So Everyone should be pushing against that, whether they're on the right or the left, if they have any sense. And the moderate left needs to dissociate themselves from the radical left, and this is something they refuse to do. It's conceptually difficult to do it, but it's a moral imperative. It's a moral necessity.
Let's see what happens. All right, Jordan, thank you very much. By the way, folks, Dr. Peterson has developed a new online writing program. It's called Self-Authoring. If you're interested, go to selfauthoring.com.
In case you've been hiding under a rock, or if you just don't have Twitter, bless your heart, Kanye West made his return to the platform and proceeded to crack the internet with 7 dirty words which would have put even George Carlin to shame. Last Saturday, Kanye tweeted, "I love the way Candace Owens thinks." If you don't know Candace Owens, she's a black conservative woman who originally went under the YouTube moniker Red Pill Black. Candace caught fire online around the summer of 2017, and my interview with her, in which we discussed her evolution from a lefty to a conservative, is one of the moments that really put her on the map. It was the first time that she had been able to explain herself in her own words in a long-form conversational setting. I don't want to rehash the whole thing right now, but Candace is no stranger to controversy, and you may remember that infamous debate that I had with Candace and Blair White late last year. The whole thing was a debacle, I make no bones about it, but hashtag Save Dave trended on Twitter, so who am I to complain? 2018 has already been a huge year for Candace, as she was hired as communications director for Turning Point USA, the largest conservative college group in America. Since then, she's been touring the country with Charlie Kirk, talking to young people, particularly young black people, as why they should embrace the victor mentality rather than the victim mentality. This has included directly attacking the Black Lives Matter movement as well as Democratic policies, which Candace argues has decimated the black family and the black community. Just last week, Candace, Charlie, and I spoke at Berkeley to a wild crowd. I'm proud to say that we had agreements and we had disagreements, and even though our styles are different, no doubt Candace certainly goes for the jugular more than I do, I always enjoy doing events with her and seeing her evolve politically, something I know a bit about myself. She's learning as she goes, and as she said to me in our interview, if I had swallowed the red pill, then she had snorted it. Beyond any of the politics, though, Candace is a friend, and our differences don't define us, they actually bring us together. All right, back to Kanye for a second. Beyond the headlines, I don't know a ton about him, although I'm obviously aware enough to recognize what a transcendent cultural figure he is. Not only is he hugely successful in the music world, he has a hugely successful fashion line and is married to Kim Kardashian, who has her own empire. You may not like the guy for whatever reason, but make no mistake, he is an absolute mogul. I may not like or even respect the influence that celebrities have over culture these days, but Kanye is truly someone who can move people's minds with what he raps or with what he tweets. This is exactly what happened with these 7 words. Immediately after Kanye's tweet in support of Candace, the internet went ablaze. Twitter Moments' lead story was about Kanye's support for far-right Candace Owens. Candace was called anti-gay and racist, something I'm still confused about as she's had dinner here with me and my husband at our home, where her anti-gayness never seemed to leak out. As for racist, there's nothing like a white lefty telling a black person who doesn't think as they demand that they do that the black person is the actual racist against their own race. Irony is truly dead, folks. On Monday this week, Kanye refused to back down despite hysterics from the media. He tweeted out a bunch of videos by another former Rubin Report guest, best-selling author and Dilbert creator Scott Adams. In essence, these videos were Scott talking about what a free thinker Kanye is. That's it. Next thing you know, the usual suspects like BuzzFeed, Mediaite, The Daily Beast, and others were labeling Scott Adams as far-right. We've seen this script a million times before with anyone who dare challenge leftist orthodoxy, be it Candace, Scott, Colin Moriarty, Jordan Peterson, or even little old me. When mainstream media has moved so far left that this wide collection of people are all smeared with the same charges of far-right racism, you know that the Overton window hasn't just shifted, it's shattered. The authors of these pieces aren't journalists, they're activists. Or, as Candace says, they aren't journalists, they're hitmen. To recap, we have a new player in Candace who is fearlessly saying how she believes that the Democrats have used the black community for decades and that the victimhood mentality of the left is the root of this problem. This, by the way, is similar to what plenty of other conservatives have been saying for years, and yes, this includes even black conservatives like my former guests Larry Elder and Thomas Sowell. The voices of black conservatives and others espousing similar ideas has been largely ignored by the mainstream media, however, and that is exactly why everyone is freaking out about Kanye's tweets. He just gave oxygen to a set of ideas that the Democrats and the mainstream media don't want you to hear. And since they've controlled the narrative for so long, they've relied on the usual smears of racism, homophobia, and bigotry instead of strengthening their own ideas. Your ideas get fat and lazy when you don't have to work them out because you've owned the narrative for so long. This is where the modern left finds itself right now. If Candace's views are far right, then that means that about 40% of America, if not more, falls into that category. I do want to address a different lurking danger here, however. I know Candace, and I believe her to be forthright and passionate as she figures this all out. I obviously don't know Kanye, nor any of his political beliefs. So we have an interesting match here where Candace is now the rocket and Kanye is the jet fuel. If Candace doesn't do the intellectual work to really figure out what she believes and why she believes it, all the while being under the insane microscope of the media that's going to be praying for her to fail, well, then the rocket will be faulty and this experiment will blow up. What if Kanye says something absolutely crazy tomorrow, which is not only possible, it's probable, or something that's counter to everything else that Candace believes? He's been known to stir the pot, and I can only assume that something like that will happen, either intentionally or by mistake. Does her rocket ship run out of fuel in mid-flight? Where does that leave this incredible momentum? Over the past year, when I've talked to people like Eric and Brett Weinstein, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, Larry Elder, Thomas Sowell, and many others, what I'm most impressed by is how complete their outlook on politics and more broadly on life is. They don't jump from conclusion to conclusion depending on the political climate. They try to really understand what they fundamentally think. So as new issues arise, their responses are complete rather than conflicted. This is something I've really tried to incorporate into my thinking and something that I know many of you are trying to do as well. This will also be Candace's challenge now, and I think she's up to it, but only she can decide that for herself. It blows my mind that every conversation we have in this room seems to become more and more relevant as time goes by. For all I know, we'll have Kanye in that guest seat soon enough. Whether he is just rocket fuel to boost ideas or is he the rocket ship that will get us to the solutions remains to be seen. But make no mistake, the issues around free speech, political correctness, and the uncomfortable truths that might be the answers to those questions have just been leveled up. Are the players ready for the next level? We'll soon find out.
Well, let me suggest that moving to the high ground is always the winning position. So the low ground is somebody said something they shouldn't have said. Staying in the low ground is, hey, stop saying that thing you weren't supposed to say. And the high ground is Kanye. It's like, I can still love you, we'll agreeing with you. Let's take it up a level. And maybe we can just not be bothered by the awfulness on the other side. I think people would find that attractive, very much the way Kanye made a big dent by doing that very thing. I think the public is sort of ready for it. As much as we like the food fight, we like the team sports, that's never going to go away. But there is a little bit of exhaustion there. I think there's an audience for simply not being offended.
Well, I think it happens to some degree at a physical level, Scott. I think people's adrenal glands burn out. I think their cortisol levels spike, and I think they're trembling all day and waiting for the next horrible thing to happen. It's sort of like you're camping in the woods and you keep hearing something rustling around your tent. You're just not going to get a lot of sleep. And so I think people are kind of like, it's almost like we'd love to keep it up, but our bodies are failing us because we're demanding way too much fight or flight response from them for innocuous things.
Yeah, I might be asking too much of free will here, but I do think you can learn to do it. I think it's a learned behavior not to strike back. Because as I said, I used to just fight back exactly that way, and that was my go-to strategy. But when I learned that not doing that gave me a better result, it was easier to change.
It is a funny thing when you fight back against these kinds of things, because my experience has been that people end up being divided into two camps: people who like you anyway and people who will never listen to you anyway. And so you're either preaching to the choir who's already with you, or you're, surrendering your time and energy and concentration to people who are just never going to listen to you anyway. So maybe there's a few people in the middle. I mean, I'm sure there are, but that's one of the reasons why this, putting it all together and making a rebuttal makes sense. But, fighting every single ant, just has you get buried.
Yeah, I always like to bring up my friend Hog Newsom. He's leader of Black Lives Matter in the greater New York area. And one of the things that he did when he visited a Trump-loving free speech group, they invited up on stage, is he immediately mirrored back their thoughts. He told them what they were thinking accurately, and then he told them what things were their concerns, and he had everybody listening. So in other words, he was bold enough to preach not to the choir. So he preached to the unconverted, which is hard. There's a reason people don't like to do it. It's hard. But he showed that it could be done and got a very good result. Kanye, same thing. He's showing that you can talk to the other side and you don't blow up in flames. Although I heard Snoop Dogg's cousin called for a hit on Kanye by the Crips. I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
There may be a limit to the high ground, just theoretically. And I think when the Crips are invoked, your high ground avenues may be just a little bit overtangled and difficult to ascend. So I agree with you. If you can meet people in the middle and you can change minds and so on, that's called civilization. Civilization is the overlap of disagreements that we agree to resolve peacefully, or at least linguistically. So I'm with you.